Ha 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 ha! Weekly Dartscast. The best darts podcast going. If you guys like your podcasts and you like your darts, then make sure you listen to the Weekly Dartscast. They're the purists podcast. If you listen to Alex and Burton, they talk about everything. They talk to the pros, they talk to the pros on the tour, the old BDO, they talk to management, they talk to darts manufacturers, proper interesting stuff, so give them a listen.
Hello and welcome to an episode of the Weekly Dartscast. We thought we'd take a break from watching football come home to talk a little bit of darts with you all. I'm Alex Moss, and joining me as always, darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing good too, thank you. We've got a busy show as always. We're going to be joined by the Rodriguez brothers, Rowby-John and Rusty Jake Rodriguez, going to be joining us a little bit later on, and that's where we're going to start this week's show as well, because they're going to be involved in the Challenge Tour, the European Challenge Tour this weekend in Germany. The Challenge Tour back for the first time this year, for the first time taking place outside of England. Who do you see as the leading contenders this weekend in Niedenhausen?
Now, of course, we don't know for sure who's participating because Challenge Tour, they don't announce the entries ahead of time, although we know who's eligible. Those would be the people who went to European Q School back in February but didn't win a tour card. So we can only guess who's going to be there. As you'll hear from later, both of the Rodriguez brothers will be there. Well, two of the Rodriguez brothers will be there. You have to start with those two as among the favorites, because if you look through the non-tour card holders so far this year in the Players' Championship events, well, they've played more than pretty much anyone else. And they also have the two highest averages of the players who will be competing or will likely to be competing in Germany this weekend. Rusty's 42nd among all tour card holders, and Robbie is 45th, both averaging north of 93 this year. That's higher than one of the leading German, Gabriel Clemens, is only averaging 92.5 on the year. So you have to start with those two, since one, we know they're going to be playing, and two, they've done a good job at the higher level, at the Pro Tour level so far this year. There's no reason to think dropping down to the Challenge Tour for the weekend or for the few days, they're not going to just continue that form. You know, another person who was high on the averages, both at Q School and so far in the Players' Championship events, is the German Lukas Wenig, the fifth highest average of players who didn't win a tour card at Q School, averaging over 90. He's been averaging nearly as well as the Rodriguez brothers so far, granted in a much smaller sample of events playing in the Players' Championship events. We haven't seen as much of him, not just this year, but ever. We haven't we only saw him at the third Super Series, where, you know, he had a couple good wins over Darius Labanauskas and Matthew Edgar, played competitively against Michael Van Guren before going out at Players' Championship Event 12. So he's shown that he can hold his own. We don't know as much about him, but everything from the form this year makes you think he's live to win one of these events, if not more. Beyond that, you know, I want to see who's competing. We're playing guesswork here because that's all we can do. You know, I'm hoping to see Richard Veenstra, who did all right at Q School, but we haven't seen much of him in the PDC before. But he's a former world number one in the BDO. I want to see how he gets on, assuming he shows up. But then there's, you know, some other players, you know, who recently have been starting to get back to form. Benito Van de Pas was playing well at the back end of last year after a couple years in the doldrums. Christian Kist, who's battled injuries, we've seen just a little bit of him this year in the Players' Championship events, and he's held his own. The best he's played since those injuries really took over him, got the better of him after he cracked the top 32 3-4 years ago. And he got a couple good wins that same Players' Championship weekend, Super Series 3 as well, and played fairly well. But we haven't seen much of him. If he's healthy now, he is a former world champion. But I want to see who's competing. I'm throwing some names out there, mostly players we've seen so far in Players' Championship events, but there's plenty we haven't seen because they haven't gotten into the fields yet, or they haven't been willing to travel. And now they'll have the opportunity without having to cross the channel, some of them without even having to leave their home country. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see what the entries are, but those are some names to look out for.
We are taking a stab in the dark really at some of these players, whether they are going to be travelling to Germany this weekend or later this week, or when you guys are listening to this on Friday, if they're going to be there to play the first of those events over the weekend. And should mention as well that these events, particularly the European Challenge Tour this weekend, they will be played in that bubble setup. So they've got to head up there on the Thursday and be tested as well. And that may rule out some of the players having to take extra time off work from their normal jobs and not be able to go. But like we say, we do know that the Rodriguez brothers, they will be there, they will be playing, and I've got to start like you did with them because they have really impressed this year without having those tour cards. They came pretty close to getting them at Q School, especially Rusty Jake, just missing out on goal differential, as we call it. Spoke to them both on the show, and it's going to be such a busy 7 days for them. They're playing the 6 Challenge Tour events. Then they're going to be staying in Germany for the 3 associate member European Tour qualifiers on the Monday. Then they're going to be heading to England for the final 3 days of the Super Series. So it's a lot of darts, 12 events they're going to be playing in over that 7-day stretch. And I guess the good thing as far as their chances in the Challenge Tour is that those events are the first ones. So you'd think that they are going to be the freshest for those events coming up first. Aside from that, though, you mentioned a few of the names that I was going to mention. I'll give a mention to, I just love saying his name, Mario van den Bogarde. It would be great to see him involved in the Challenge Tour, see how he gets on. Sebastian Bieletsky as well. He's really impressed this year when we've seen him. We've seen a little bit of him at the UK Open when he hit that 9-darter, got to the 4th round. He's a player that has got a lot of potential and still very young. So we don't know if he's going to play this weekend, but if he does, he's going to be one to watch out for. Another player that we've seen who won the last Challenge Tour event, the last one of 2020, Kevin Dutz, who we spoke about players being unlucky at Q School. He finished 6th out of all the players on the averages for Q School across the UK and Europe. 92.42 his average, so he had a higher average than a lot of the players that ended up getting tour cards, but he missed out in the end. But he's a player that's shown glimpses on the Pro Tour this year as well with what he's capable of. And as I say, he's a former winner of these events as well. So there's some players to mention. There's a lot of quality, I think, in the field, potentially in the field, but there's some of the names that I'm going to be looking out for.
Yeah, and I mentioned Kevin Dutz as well. 8 Players Championship events this year, and he won his first match in 7 of the 8. So it's not just, he's getting into them. He's winning matches on the Pro Tour. Now, the PDC have announced that there will be 3 associate member qualifiers for the European Tour tagged on to the end of the Challenge Tour, both this upcoming weekend in Germany as well as for the UK one, which is in a few weeks' time. Do you think this is a good move, though?
Yeah, this was interesting. We spoke about the European Tour on last week's show, and when we thought it was going to come back, the PDC announcing that up to 3 tour card holder qualifiers were going to take place at the end of the Super Series next week. But the associate member qualifiers we didn't know much about. And that's a thing to mention with these European tours. It's not just the tour card holders that are involved. You've got various other qualifiers involved in that, the associate member, the host nation, Nordic and Baltic, the East Europe as well. So lots of different qualifiers going on for these events. I think it's probably a good move. That there's only 2 grumbles I'd say about it, really. And the first one is that it was announced at relative short notice. It was announced on Tuesday this week, a few days before the first Challenge Tour. And of course, players, if they're high up on that Q School order of merit that get into the Super Series next week, they have had to alter their plans a little bit. And it's not just easy a case of changing flights and things. As I mentioned, you've got the bubble still going on with this Challenge Tour, with the Super Series next week, with the testing to play in these events. It's a lot of hassle for the players. So kudos to them that they've been able to get it sorted and be able to play all the events that they want to. But I think maybe it's a little bit short notice. The other thing I've got to say as well is the big question that everyone's asking is, where are these European Tour events going to take place? That is something that at the time of recording, we don't know the answer to that. Are they going to be in Germany? Are they going to be in Gibraltar? Are they going to be in Hungary? Some of the places that we mentioned last week, because there are different qualifiers. You've got the host nation qualifier where you've got a lot more spots up for grabs than just this associate member. They've split it between the UK and Europe. So there's 1 spot available in each qualifier. I don't think you're able to play in 2 of the qualifiers. So you are kind of hedging your bets a little bit. If there is an event that ends up being in your country and you play the associate member qualifier, you're going to miss out on potentially having a bigger or better chance, more spots available in that host nation qualifier. But on the other side of things, you've got to say as well that the PDC have said that they want to get these qualifiers in as early as possible to give the players that do qualify, do come through these qualifiers, enough chance to get their travel sorted for when these events do come. So it's a difficult juggling act, I think, but I think the players that are involved in all the events, I think they've done well really to make sure that they can play in the events that they want to.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this just makes the most sense to avoid having to have players have to travel for qualifiers 3 different times, and allows you to plan more in advance, because you really do need to be planning in advance as much as you can. But as you said, players are having to change flights, change or trains, or change hotel bookings at the last minute for this. And I feel like there's another way to get around it that could have worked, because, okay, we've complained before about having the 2 Challenge Tour events back to back on the same day, but that concern really isn't the case as much this year because the field's going to be less than half the size because we've split it across the two, the UK Challenge Tour and the European, or UK and Ireland Challenge Tour and the European Challenge Tour. So that buys a couple hours. So you could potentially have staged, instead of adding a day last minute onto the event, added an event on the Friday and Saturday after the two Challenge Tours to have the qualifier, and then have a early start on Sunday for the third one, or something along those lines. Don't know how well that would have worked, but it does seem to be just a little bit fairer than throwing an event on. And yes, many of these players won't have flights because they can just take a train in. But some of the players who are coming from Eastern Europe or from other places, or not just Eastern Europe, but also from the Iberian Peninsula, will probably be taking flights, and they might not be able to compete in the European Tour qualifiers. That said, this is just an added perk that they have. They're not tour card holders. They're being given this extra thing to make it slightly more convenient for them than having to travel to each event, each European Tour event, and play the qualifier the day before. So they really can't complain. And going forward, I think this is a good way to do it. We'll see if they, how it works out. We'll see how many people compete. And obviously with more notice, if there are more European Tour events this year that they have to do qualifiers for, to be able to get that notice out ahead of time will help. But I'm really just complaining for the sake of complaining, because it's not that bad what they have done. It's just, I think there could have been a slightly better way to do it.
And now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show, and it is with the former World Youth Championship finalist, Rowby-John Rodriguez. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the former PDC title winner, Rowby-John Rodriguez. Thanks for joining us, Robbie. How are you doing?
Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm practicing hard and heading to a busy week.
Yeah, we're going to come on to that. We'll start with a quick look back to the last Super Series nearly 2 weeks ago now. I'm assuming the win against Red Hot Jose de Sousa is one that you won't be forgetting for a while.
Yeah, it was hard. I mean, I played the day before against him. I had zero chance. He hit everything. And the next day we played against each other again. And I was thinking, okay, he will not gonna stop. He won 2 tournaments in a row. And it was like that he played really phenomenal. He had a 106 average. He was not stopping, but I was just thinking, okay, take your own legs, try your best. That's it, what you can do. But and yeah, it helped me. The last 2 legs was 11-13. It was a good timing, and that's why I won.
Definitely was. Well, let's rewind back. We last had you on with my co-host Burton in late 2019, just after your run to the quarterfinals in Vienna. Not long after came your 5th PDC World Championship, losing out to Noel Malcolm. How did you reflect on your last Ali Pali campaign?
Ali Pali wasn't the best for me at the moment until now. I just won 1 game on the stage. Last time I had a little bit of more pressure because I was losing my tour card, and obviously I lost it. If I had a good run there, I would keep it, but can't change it now. Played poor over there, and that happens in darts.
3 days after that game, we saw Noel take Peter Wright, the eventual champion, all the way to sudden death and have a match start to win. Did you watch the game? Are you one who watched the rest of the tournament, or do you prefer to switch off from it?
Yeah, I still watch the games, and I was watching that game as well. And he took him to the limit, and but Peter Wright had a phenomenal 140 finish, and that was just I saw he was really nervous, and he pulled it on the last on the final stage to win that match. But that's just if the people over there, I know them, and I've been there, and there's so many good players over in the Philippines or in Asia, and I know they're capable of winning games like that, but they're just not used to it, and that's why he lost that game, in my opinion.
Well, of course, 2020 turned out to be a strange year with the pandemic, and you were caught up in it very early on during that last Players' Championship before the world shut down. You won your first round game, then you pulled out of the event. Can you talk us through what happened that day?
What happened that day? Can't remember 100% anymore, but probably I had to pull out because I needed to fly back home because my daughter was born with many heart problems, and there might be an operation that day or on the next day. That's why I missed it. That's the only reason I would miss a tournament. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
And how is your daughter now? Is she better now?
Yeah, we had 2 heart operations already. The third one is coming soon, and yeah, it was the last couple. It's her birthday today. She's turning 2 today, and the last couple of 2.5 years since we know that she was born with a heart that she got a heart problem. It was hard, but it is getting better. She will need more surgeries, but she's fighting. We are fighting, and it's always hard to take, but we can't change it anymore. We just have to live with it and do the best out of it.
Well, we certainly wish her all the best and happy birthday as well. And as someone who's been on the main PDC tour since 2014, how were those 4 months for you during the break, during the initial lockdown? Did you use it as time to take a break with the family, or did you work on your game at all?
It was. I'm not the best practicer, or I'm not practicing that much like I used to. But no, I didn't change anything. I was just happy, to be honest, that I have more time at home, have more time with the family, just to be. It was new. It is new as well for me to be a dad, so that was good during the break. And to keep my head free out of darts. Yeah, just to stay at home with the family. That was a good time for me as well.
Well, the next time we saw you on TV was, of course, the World Cup in November after missing the previous 2 years. How excited were you to be back representing Austria and alongside Mensa Suljovic?
Yeah, it was great to be back on the World Cup playing for Austria. And we played really good in the beginning. We had our chances, or let's say I had the chance to win against England in the singles. I missed my opportunities, but to be fair, it was my mistake not to be in the next round and to get further. But Mensa and me, we are playing good together. We know each other very well, and I hope at the moment without a tour record, I'm the second highest ranked player from Austria again. So it looks like we'll be back together on the stage. But until there's a lot of tournaments. My little brother is behind me. I hope I can play it again and get 1 or 2 steps further than last year.
Well, we can certainly see it from watching on TV. You and Mensa have a great partnership together, and for the first time the World Cup was in Austria, although sadly behind closed doors due to the pandemic. How did you find playing in a big event in your own country but without that home crowd that you would have had?
It was pain in the ass to get the World Cup at home soil without having the crowd. It was hard to take because I was so happy that the World Cup is at home, but because of that pandemic, it was bad for us. It was because I know we played Germany in Germany already, and it is the crowd. If the crowd is there, they're pushing you, they're helping you. Yeah, it was hard, but I hope in future that we'll be back in Austria again. Yeah,
fingers crossed for that. And as you say, you lost out to England in the quarterfinals, but 3 days later you're throwing a 9-darter in the Winter Series. You miss out on the final round of the Grand Slam qualifiers, and it's down to the World Championship qualifiers to get to Ali Pali. So how were you feeling heading into that qualifier with your tour card essentially on the line as well?
Yeah, that period of time when I knew, okay, I will play the World Cup, I will play the last tournaments to stay on the tour, I give everything. I was practicing very hard. I was doing everything what I can do, and that 9-darter against Boris was great, but I needed good results to keep my tour card. I didn't perform, or I didn't get the results which I needed to save it, but I can't say I didn't give everything because Grand Slam qualifier, I missed the final. I think the last 3 years in a row, always losing the final. At the World Championship, I had Karel Sedlacek, tough opponent in the qualifiers. He played great, and I didn't find my game, so I wasn't in the World Championship anymore. So that was the point. Okay, I'll be back on the Q school, and it was painful, but I was down a little bit, of course, but I didn't. I'm still here fighting for it and doing the best what I can do.
As you say, you're back at Q School. A lot different, it's got to be said, this time than when you first went in 2014. There's one now in Germany, and now we've got the 2 stages as well. How did you spend that long break, I guess, between those qualifiers and the start of Q School to get yourself ready?
I wasn't taking myself too much under pressure. I didn't change my practice routines. I didn't practice that much. I was just taking it how it comes, because I knew, okay, if I'll be there, I'm good enough to win the tour card back 100%. And but when I traveled there on the first day when I arrived at the hotel, I had so back problems because of my disc prolapse years ago, and because of the travel, it was really. I was crying for pain because it was hurting that bad, and I thought, okay, what should I do? You can't change it. So on the first 2 days it was really hard to play, hard to stand at the hockey, and after the third day it was okay again. But because of that big break, which I had my last tournament in October, November, something like that, and the next one was Q School, so I didn't have, and there was no tournaments in Austria or near Austria as well, so there was no match practice, and because of that 2 stages at the Q School, I would prefer to not be at the final stage already, because the people who played the first stage was like, okay, there's practice, they played already, that was in the tournament already, and first day was bad draw against the young Dutchman. I missed match start, and he finished on the bull to win 6-5. Same on the second day, I lost 6-5. So it was unlucky scores, results for me. But I was thinking, okay, let's keep on going. I had a good run one day, but it was beginning of the Q card. 100%, I wanted the 2 card, but as well, I know, okay, if I don't get it, it's not end of the world, because it's 1 year with a break, or at the moment I'm playing every super series because I'm high in the rankings to get invited all the time, and it helps me, to be fair. I'm not that stressed anymore. I have fun to play darts again, so everything is going good. It's just one step back, and maybe we can go further than before.
I mean, yeah, it looks like it's worked out pretty well so far. You did fall just 3 places short of getting that tour card in the end, but just 8 days later you were among those 128 players lining up in Bolton for the first Super Series. With the lack of challenge tours so far this year, did you get a sense that you were still going to be quite involved in the Pro Tour this first half of the year?
I was thinking about it, because in the beginning of the year there wasn't dates for challenge tours, and I was with the ranking from the Q School. I knew, okay, I will be playing this Super Series, because as I played the tour years ago and many years, and I know there's not always, everybody's not coming, so I knew I had the chances, and now is the challenge tour coming. But it is good for me not to have a tour card, in my opinion, because I can also be more relaxed on the hockey and get the fun again to play darts. That's the main point.
Well, we have to give a nod to your first round record on the floor this year. Played 16, won 14, only lost 2, and some of the names that you've beaten in the first round: Simon Whitlock, Dimitri Vandenberg, Peter Wright. How pleased have you been to get off to a lot of winning starts so far this year?
It is great. I know I'm capable of winning against everybody. It was just lack of confidence in the past years, and too much pressure on I put too much pressure on myself as well. And now I just take it. Okay, I'm not here. I'm here at the Super Series to show them I'm good enough, and I have nothing to lose. And at home everything is fine again. The last couple of months was okay with my little one, and it was just less stress at home as well. So I had my head free to play darts. And but now, because we was 2 weeks ago, we was in the hospital again, and then we get the result, what happening, we need a next operation. That is all, it's again in my head, but I'll try my best to get it away during what I play, but it's hard. Darts is, let's say, 80% mental, and if you know there's something wrong at home or anything is not right, it's hard to play.
Well, we should mention one of your brothers has been alongside you on the tour this year, Rusty Jake Rodriguez. What's it been like having him there with you?
Yeah, to be fair, I was before Q school. I told him, because we was practicing together, and I told him, you're gonna get your tour card 100%. What that good he was, and but I was also right that he won't get his tour card during 4 days. I was thinking that he will get his tour card by DeWitt, and because he was unlucky in the last day to get his tour card. He just missed by points, and that is, in my opinion, he should have his tour card, because he won every single game, every single first game at the Q school, and but the points was Marjanovic had the same points, but he had the point system was for me not right, because Rusty was better during 4 days, but that didn't count, so that's why he's top of the table at the moment, and he's good. He's good enough for the tour. He's good enough for everything, and I'm really glad for him that he's also showing during the Super Series that he's winning games. He's went to the last 16 a couple of times, so he's getting his head right as well. He's getting older. He's getting better, and he's not that. He was young when I was telling him, don't do that, don't do this. He didn't hear to me, and now he changed himself, as well as at home. His private life changed, and I can see it, and I can tell that there's not. If everything is fine at home, private, you're gonna play good, and you can ask that to every single dart player, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely right, and I'm sure he'd like us to remind our listeners, you two drew each other in the first round of one of the events a few months ago. You coming out on top 6-4. You played each other at Q School and a few other times in a PDC setting before. But what was it like playing Rusty in an actual Players' Championship match?
It is hard to play against my brothers, but that's also a reason. In practice, they always smash me. Always, because I'm in practice. And but they never ever won against me on a PDC tournament, never. And that is my I have a 100% record against both of them, Roxy and Rusty. And of course, Rusty's good, really good, and I'm nervous against him, of course, but I know that he's nervous as well against me. So it's just a 50-50 between us two.
Away from the Pro Tour, I have to bring up the UK Open. You made it through 3 rounds on that first session, and you pushed Johnny Clayton close in round 4. What did you take away from your first appearance in a major in a little while?
Well, it was UK Open. That was the biggest run for me. It was great. I was playing really good at the Super Series, and then it was straight away was the UK Open, so I was full of confidence. And I know I pushed Johnny on of doing everything, but in that period of time he was the best player, and he's one of the best players in the world. So it was hard for me. I was hitting good, but he hit everything more. So, but I'm really happy how I perform at the UK Open, and also it was new for me to watch a draw on the TV screen, because I never had that, and there was a little break. So I went to my room back, had a shower, came back, and it was all new, and that's all. But I'm winning. I'm winning while doing that, because it's not the next time. It's not the first time that I have to do that. So yeah, it was good.
Finish up with a look ahead, and as we touched on before we started, it's going to be a very busy week coming up for you. Just talk us through what darts you've got coming up from Friday onwards for the next 7 days. Yeah,
I'm gonna travel on Thursday to Germany first. There's gonna be a challenge tour until Sunday. Then on Monday there will be 3 qualifiers for the European tours. Then I will be heading back to England for the Super Series, and until Thursday I will be in England. So it's gonna be a hard week and a lot of darts, and I hope a lot of good results.
Yeah, that's going to be 7 consecutive days of darts in 2 different countries. How do you approach something like that? Have you done anything similar in the past, playing 7 days in a row and with the travelling as well?
Not without a break, to be fair. So I'm taking a little bit of rest the next couple of 2 days, and be heading. I will try my best over there and see what I can achieve and what I can bring on the board.
And we mentioned off air as well that there's been a change to your schedule as well, that the PDC announcing today when we're talking the 3 qualifiers for the European Tour running on Monday in Germany, clashing with that first day of the Super Series, which has messed your schedule up a little bit. But yeah, you're still happy that you're still going to get over there and play 3 of the 4 events next week? Yeah,
definitely. I was when I read the news, just straight called my manager and asked him, we have a problem, what should I do? What can I play? I want to play everything. And he straight called up the PDC and told me the good news that I will just miss 1 day and I can still play on the last 3 days at the Super Series. So I'm really glad that is possible, and thanks to the PDC as well that they can do that for us, because I'm in a good position at the Players Championship ranking, and but I don't want to miss the chance to get to the European Championship as well. So now missing 1 day at the Super Series, but to have 3 qualifiers is it's great. It's great that I can play everything.
Good to hear. Well, Robbie, it's a pleasure to catch up with you. We appreciate your time ahead of what's going to be a busy week for you. Wish you all the best with that and what comes for the rest of the year. And again, best wishes to the family as well.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again to Robbie for joining us. Now looking ahead to events a little bit further forward, and the next Super Series gets underway on Monday next week. The last events before the cut-off for the World Matchplay for the 16 seeds. Currently, who is this week most important for, do you think?
Well, there's a very obvious answer, and that's because there's 1 seed who's really, really been struggling this year, Glen Durrant. We don't know what to expect, and I think he doesn't know what to expect. He obviously has no confidence right now. His throw is completely out of sorts, but just as quickly as he lost his throw, he could get it back. It wasn't that long ago when he was lifting major titles. So this is a big week for him, not, to win a title per se, but just to get some confidence back and start to throw well. I don't expect it to happen, but you never know. I didn't expect that we would be talking about how poor Glen Durrant was playing when we were talking about him a year ago. And I don't think he would have expected that. And we've had him on and he's talked about it. But he's the obvious answer. He needs a result. And by a result, I mean just in a match, not just a tournament. Beyond that, looking through the provisional seeds, I mean, obviously, one of the players just outside is Ian White. But if he can get his form back, he could nudge into the top 16. And you don't want to have to go against the top seed in the second round, but that could be better than drawing him in the first round because you're not one of the seeds. So Ian White isn't a seed now, but still could be, which means Johnny Clayton needs to keep doing what he's been doing to make sure he stays in the seeds. And that Johnny Clayton would love to go against his fellow Welshman in the second round in a 1/16 matchup and to show who the best Welsh player is right now in Planet Darts. So Johnny Clayton needs a result to stay ahead of Ian White so that he can be in that position. Beyond that, also Michael Van Gerwen hasn't won a title this year. We can also say Daryl Gurney, who has been playing better than he was, but still is just clinging on to that top 16 and hasn't won a title in some time. Both he and Michael Van Gerwen haven't won a title in a long time. For Van Gerwen, more than a month seems like a long time, but he hasn't won one all year, and Gurney hasn't won one in a couple of years. Both of them, I think, will be going in thinking this is a chance, especially with the World Matchplay around the corner, to get that first title and maybe show that they're still one of the names to look out for in Blackpool.
You mentioned some of the guys that I was going to mention, and you can't really start anywhere else. But with Glen Durrant, who, as we've seen, he struggled during the Premier League, and off the back of that, he had the break and he returned to action the last Super Series a couple of weeks ago. Played for the first 3 days, had 3 low 80 averages, lost in the first round, and then he decided to pull out of the 4th day. And he put on Twitter as well that he's battling with his own confidence demons right now, so he's in a tough place. And you got to think 3 or 4 weeks time he's going to be back at the Winter Gardens, a place which will hold some very special memories. 2 years ago he made his debut in that tournament, the World Matchplay, made it all the way to the semi-finals that night that hardly anyone's going to forget it for a long time, beating Michael Van Gerwen as well on the way to that semi-final. So it's a place that holds a lot of fond memories for him. And yeah, like you say, he's in need of a good week coming up in this last Super Series, not necessarily going all the way and winning another title, but I think more so the performances rather than the results. If he can lift his average a little bit, maybe get it into the 90s, 95, something like that, and show the form that got him to that Premier League title last year, I think that would be a big stepping stone and a big positive for him going into the World Matchplay, because the form that he showed in the Premier League, it has, unfortunately for him, carried on into the Pro Tours as well, and it's a tough thing to do is to arrest that sliding form. So a big week coming up for him. You mentioned Michael van Gerwen as well. We're into July now, still without a title. And okay, the events have been spread out a lot more this year because of the times that we're in. But we've had, if you include the World Championship, we've had 20 tournaments now, and he's not won any of them. And okay, he's missed 5 of them. But for a player of Michael van Gerwen's stature in the game, you would expect him to win a title. Does he need to win a title next week? I think he wants to win a title. That's the main thing going into next week. He'll want to get that monkey off his back going into the World Matchplay, which the last few years he's not done too well in when you compare it to the other majors. So yeah, I definitely think he wants to get a title and break that duck for the year. And you mentioned as well that the race for that 16th spot as well, because Johnny Clayton, he moved himself into the top 16 in the last Super Series, but 4 events can easily find himself out of those top 16. We know how good Ian White is. Okay, maybe not so far this year. He's shown not much of it, but we all know that he's capable of going on a run, especially on the floor, and picking up a title, and that would be enough to see him go back into that top 16. So yeah, I think those are the 3: Johnny Clayton, Glenn Durrant, Michael van Gerwen. And aside from that, really, a lot of the players in that top 16, they've shown some very good form this year at times. So I think a lot of them will be relatively pleased, really, going into Blackpool.
Now, still 4 events to go before we finalize the field for the World Matchplay. As things currently stand, though, 8 debutants set to make the field. Do you think it'll still be that way, though, when we get to the final cutoff next week?
I think it'll be around that. I was just looking at the names that are set to make their debuts at Blackpool, and you're looking right at the top of that Pro Tour list. Devon Peterson, Damon Heta, Dirk van Dijvenbode. I mean, they're definitely there. Luke Humphreys, he's had a few finals this year in 7th. He's going to be there. Ross Smith, he's had a final recently. Callum Ridds, who's won a title this year, you're probably going to say they're in. Although we do have 4 events, there's still a chance for players to catch them, but it is a tough ask, I think, for them players to be overtaken and drop out of that 16. Aside from that, though, the other 2 currently set to make their debut. Ryan Searle, who had a final in the last Super Series, that was much needed for him, and Madars Razma, they're the 2 to keep an eye on really going into next week, because especially Madars Razma, he's only £500 clear of Stephen Bunting and Martijn Kleermaker going into this final stretch of games. And we could end up with 9 debutants. You never know. We could see Jermaine Wadomina. We spoke about him on the last show. He's not shown good form recently. If he drops out that 16, we could see someone like Kleermaker or Darius Labanauskas, or even Willie O'Connor, who surprised has never played at the World Matchplay yet. They're within touching distance with 4 events to go. So potentially we could end up with 9 debutants in the field, but I think 6 minimum. I'd probably go between 7 and 8 for me. I think that is a safe bet to go for, and it's going to be an entertaining 4 days if anything's to go by. Last year, remember the summer series that we had, we saw Ryan Joyce win one of the titles on the 5 days. That pushed him into the spots he got in there. And who can forget Devon Peterson last year? He's going to be in Blackpool this year, but came very close to getting that debut last year in the World Matchplay. Lost out in the semi-finals on the final day. He needed a title. Averages 113 in that semi-final to go, and Price lost in the decider. So he did as much as he could in that final day without getting to the World Matchplay. But he's definitely going to be there. We're probably looking at 7 to 8. 9 would be a bit of a stretch. It is possible, but I think 7 to 8 is a safe bet for the debutants.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I'll start the same place you did. Devon Peterson, he's really been struggling recently after looking like one of the best players in the world last year, but he's did what he needed to last year. The European Tour title did help, but just was on such phenomenal form that he's been able to afford some struggles this year. He'll be there. Damon Heta will be there. Dirk van Dijvenbode. Amazing to think he's a debutant based on what we've seen from him over the last year. But yeah, he did not make the World Matchplay last year, and obviously never did before. All 3 of them are there. Luke Humphreys is there now after those finals. And although it's not mathematically secure yet, Ross Smith and Ryan Searle both should be there. Ross Smith almost certainly, Ryan Searle slightly less almost certainly, but pretty almost certainly. And for both of them, that's big since they came close the last couple of years, but just couldn't get over the line when it was all said and done. It looks like this year they will, and will be making their debut. And right in between them on the table is Callum Ridds, who won his first title earlier this year and seems on pace to be making his debut. And then that just becomes a question, who else is going to get in there? Right now, Matos Razma is 500 pounds clear of Stephen Bunting, who would not be a debutant, and Martijn Kleermaker, who would be, for the last spot. There's plenty of other players, some of whom would be on debut, some who wouldn't, waiting in the weeds to get up there. Raymond van Barneveld, who's won a title this year, is only 5,000 pounds back. I'm saying only, but that it's a final or a second title. He's won one already this year. Why not win another? Simon Whitlock is right there as well. Adrian Lewis, who was one of the form players in the last Super Series, is only 6,000 pounds back. Steve Beaton is in with a chance and is playing some good darts now after really struggling for a year. And there's plenty of other players who are capable of winning a title on any given day who are within a title of Matos Razma. Whether there'll be 7 or 8 debutants, or even 9, as you said, Jermaine Wadomina could fall out. I don't know. Razma has a lot to do to keep that spot. But even if he doesn't keep it, there are plenty of debutants there. I'm going to say those 7. I'm going to say one of the established players, whether it's Stephen Bunting, whether it's Jamie Hughes, or someone else I've already mentioned, or someone I haven't. I think one of the established players is going to put a run together one day and get in. Not saying Razma will drop out. Well, I guess I am, because I'm saying 7, although he could also catch Wadomina. So yeah, I'll go 7. I think it'll be 7, but it is going to be tight.
Lots to play for next week. Well, let's move on to our next guest on this week's show. It is a former winner on the development tour, Rusty Jake Rodriguez. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the former development tour title winner, Rusty Jake Rodriguez. Thanks for the time. How are you doing?
Hello, no worries. Good, thank you.
Good to hear. Well, let's start off at the beginning for you in darts. We spoke with one of your brothers, Rowby-John, for this week's show yesterday. I assume your interest in darts came from the family too?
Yes, exactly. My dad used to play probably not even when my oldest brother was born. So basically, I grew up with darts. He taught me darts. I couldn't walk and still had darts in my hand. So it's a family thing, really.
Talk to us about your early years playing darts. You made the final of the WDF World Youth Cup at the age of 14. What are your memories of that run?
Oh, that was in Turkey. How many years? 6 years from now on, absolutely. It was, I think, at that time, like, and at my youth games, that was my biggest achievement. Getting to the World Cup final, losing to Michael Verberg. Still remember it was like yesterday, but lost it. Played all right, but he was just better.
And then at 15, you won your first WDF senior title, winning the Hungarian Masters, beating a certain Krzysztof Ratajski on the way to the title. What did that win mean to you?
I think I'm the youngest ever person to win a WDF title senior. I'm not sure about it, but I think so. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah, I beat good names over there and in Hungary, and it's weird, you know. You're 15, you're playing good, and you're beating good players, and it gives you the confidence, obviously, to go further and further, and that's what I'm doing.
A great achievement at such a young age, and shortly after your 16th birthday, you head to Q School for the first time. Was that always the aim, to try and get on the PDC main tour as soon as you were able to enter?
I was sometimes disappointed when I was 15, that I can't play the European, the Q School or the development tour, because I was aiming for that all the time when I was already 14 or 15, and you're going to switch from the BDO to the PDC. So that's what I've done, and yeah, that's where I stick.
Well, looking back at that year, 2017, lots of highlights to pick out. You had a quarter-final on the Challenge Tour, then a title on the Development Tour. I was looking at some of the names that you beat on the way to that title. Luke Humphries, Ted Evans, who have won a lot of titles on that tour. What was that feeling like winning your first PDC title?
Yeah, it was in Germany, in Hildesheim. It was boiling hot in the room, and I was sweating, and to be honest, I was so nervous in the final. Robbie was there as well, and he couldn't watch it. He was just at the back, probably 10 rows somewhere, so I can't see him. Otherwise I get nervous, and it was, yeah, absolutely amazing, and hopefully more tournament wins for me sooner.
Yeah, you mentioned your brother later that year in Vienna. You made your debut on the Euro Tour, qualifying along with your brothers Robbie and Roxy. We don't get to see those host nation qualifiers apart from following on Dart Connect. So what was it like that night when all three of you won through the qualifiers?
It was, well, Robbie left earlier, and Roxy was looking at me. I was playing in the last game, so Robbie went through already, was qualified already. Roxy was qualified already. I was the only person who didn't qualify yet, and I was nervous, to be honest. And yeah, Roxy stayed and watched me, and that gave me a bit of confidence. And yeah, there was never been 3 brothers in one European tour, so we made history there as well.
And you all lined up on that Friday night session in the first round, and fair to say you stole the show winning on your debut. How special a moment was that, and still at 16, very early on in your career, to get a win?
I was 12 hours before my game there. I had the last game at the night, right, and I was probably at 12 a.m. already there. I was practicing already. I was watching the games. Can't believe, and yeah, the crowd was amazing, and I played pretty good, and yeah, stole the show, stole the hearts of the fans.
Happy days. Well, 2018 you come very close to winning a tour card at Q School. That year we see you a few more times on the Euro Tour, some more deep runs on the Development Tour, the Challenge Tour. Also that year you and Robbie contested the final of the South and East Europe Qualifier for the Worlds. What was that like, playing your brother for a spot at Ali Pali?
To be honest, that was that is one of the worst days in my life. I had chances to win. I didn't take it, and he went through the LPLA, and we didn't know that he was already qualified, so he had to play his game, I had to play my game. If he would knew that he's qualified already, he wouldn't play it, so probably I would have won it. But you never know, and I just lost it, and probably 2 or 3 weeks of disappointment, and yeah, it's gone, it's past tense now, so can't do anything now.
Well, let's talk about some happier times, and of course you have played on the Ali Pali stage, winning the PDC World Championship there. What was that experience like, getting to play the final on the biggest stage in darts?
Yeah, it was great, but there was no crowd in it. It's probably like 3-4 people, but still, yeah, without any crowds in it, it's like a normal floor tournament. I mean, you're playing on a stage, yes, but no crowd is nothing special really. But really happy to win the title, and a World Championship title, and no one can take it from you.
And obviously a difficult year last year with the pandemic, a lot of events being cancelled, and a big break during the year with no events. How did you find that time? Was it hard to keep motivated, or did you manage to keep practicing throughout?
I'm so lazy. I usually don't practice, so I was just fine. I didn't practice a lot. I spent a lot of times with my friends, with my girlfriend, with everything beside that. And as soon as the tournament were here, where the tournament calendar was outside, still didn't practice really, and just do my own business like I always do, because I don't practice a lot really.
Well, a very different Q School this year with the 2 stages, but you come through the first stage on day 1, a run to the last 8 on the final day, and again coming so close to getting that tour card, missing out by 1 spot on the order of merit. I think it was down to leg difference in the end. How hard was that to get over, being so close?
The last day against Robert Marianovic, I was too confident. I thought myself, I can't lose, and if you're overconfident, you lose in that game. So basically my own fault, but it's always a learning process. So I'm still young, I can still do it. Next year I can actually, it's difficult. For me, you keep on saying, yeah, it's this time, it's this time, it's this time. Sometimes you're so disappointed, and losing the leg differences makes it even worse, but that makes me playing the best out of my life at the moment, because I learned from it, and I'm still at the Pro Tours. I played all the Pro Tours really, and yeah, it's difficult, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, leaving Germany though, just 8 days later you were in Bolton for that first Super Series, getting a call up as an invited player due to tour card holders missing out, and as you say, you've played in all the Pro Tours so far. Did you have an idea that you'd likely still play in a lot of the events in these first few months?
Yeah, of course. I was number one have the number one spot if someone goes out, and there's always one guy who doesn't play, and a lot of Germans. I mean, they got a tour card, and it's just they got work, but I don't know why they're playing it really, because they got a tour card. They played one Pro Tour, that was in Germany. Since then, nothing. I mean, the rule really. They took my spot really, because 2 or 3 players from Germany are not playing. They only play in Germany. That's it.
Well, you've made your mark without having that tour card. You've made 4 last 16 so far. You've beat some established names as well. What have been the highlights or the games that you look back on that you're most proud of from playing in these Players' Championship events so far this year?
There's too many actually. I was first when I was in Bolton. I was like, Jesus, I'm in the room with the big boys now. And first day was a bit. I was not having my confidence. I was like, where am I? What am I supposed to do here? And played not good. And then I took some advice of Menza and Robbie. They said, keep calm. You're gonna be the best in this room one day. And just smashing it. And then gave me a bit of confidence as well, and starts on winning. Not bad for the first week at the Pro Tour really.
You played him at Q School. You've also played him in one of those Players' Championship events this year. Your brother Robbie, you mentioned yesterday, he's got a good record against you in games in the PDC, but he also admitted that in practice it's a different story. You win a lot of the time. You've obviously played him thousands of times in practice, but what was it like when you play your brother in a PDC event?
As a younger brother, really, you just want to smash him. You want to make him, let him cry. That's my goal actually, but it's not working at the moment. He got a brilliant record against me, but it's the nerves really, because the younger brother wants always to win against the older brother. You wanna show him that you're the better player. But I am the better player, but I'm still losing. And it's at least at the Pro Tour, one of us goes through, so one of us has the rankings money, and this is very important. But I want to be that guy really.
Well, I mentioned we spoke to him yesterday. Robbie did ask us to ask you who is the better player, you or him?
100% me. What did he say?
He just said to ask you. We said anything we should ask you, and he said who's the better player.
Yeah, it's 100% me, without any doubt.
Well, let's look ahead, and like Robbie, it's going to be a busy week coming up for yourself. I assume that you're running on the same schedule as he is, a Challenge Tour Friday to Sunday, the Euro Tour Qualifiers Monday, and then the Super Series Tuesday to Thursday?
Yeah, that's the goal. That's my plan. It's going to be very busy, yes. Going to be hard 1.5 weeks playing 13 events. Hopefully I don't get tired too quick and don't get bored really, and hopefully some good results as well.
Yeah, we should mention those Euro Tour qualifiers. They only got announced on Tuesday, yesterday, when we were talking. What did you think when you saw the news? Was it a hard decision to skip one day of the Super Series, or did you think you've got the right balance still?
I spoke to Robbie, I spoke to Russ, I spoke to my manager, and to be honest, I don't. It's like you miss one Pro Tour, right, and you have three chances to qualify for the European Tour. So if you qualify for one, you got a grand already for the Pro Tour Order of Merit as well. So it could well be that I'm gonna go fly to England and lose the first round. So it's from the mindset. It's better if you play the qualifier. So it wasn't a difficult decision really. So I took it, and I asked my manager what should I do, and he said do that. Bang, I did it.
Fair enough. Well, that's 7 days that you're going to be playing in a row in 2 different countries. Have you ever done anything close to that before, and how do you prepare for something like that?
Since the last Pro, I didn't touch a dart. And well, you go into the venue and you practice. You go 3-4 hours before the event anyway. And you got to practice 3-4 hours warming up, and that's actually your practice. You can't say you don't know how. You go into the room and you know how to throw a dart. So if you're warming up 3-4 hours, you know how to do it. So basically, no need to practice because you got to play 7 days in a row anyway. Probably the first day is going to be a bit of warm up, like I always do, and yeah.
Well, lastly, as we enter this second half of the year, starting off with a busy week of events, but there's lots to play for. What are you looking to get out of these next 6 months? Is there one goal in particular, qualifying for the Worlds, getting a tour card through the Challenge Tour, the World Cup potentially? What's the one goal that you're looking for at the minute?
World Championship qualifier. To qualify for the World Championship. That's it. That's the only goal. And probably this week in 7 days win 15 to make sure that I qualify for the World Championships already. And if I could do another 4,000 or 5,000, I should be in.
Fingers crossed for that. Well done on the year so far, and we wish you all the best for this busy week coming up and for the rest of the year. And thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks again to Rusty for joining us, and we'll finish up with a listener question, a question of the week. But first, to our sponsor Low 6 who present this show. Keep an eye out for the PDC Picks app. We're going to have some contests on there next week during the Super Series. We'll mention a little bit more about that in a moment. But to some bigger news outside of darts, and it's time for us to make our second picks. Who's going to win the Euros? Unfortunately for us, Portugal, my pick, and Germany, your pick, both going out in the last 16. So as we enter the quarterfinals this weekend, who are you now tipping to win Euro 2020?
Ooh, well, you had told me not to tip England.
Yeah, please don't.
I mean, it's difficult not to tip them to at least make the final. Although, the Czech Republic and Denmark both look good, and Denmark is obviously playing inspired football right now. So we'll see how England gets on, but they should be a favorite now to make the final. Will they? I don't care if football comes home, because soccer already came home 2 summers ago when the U.S. retained the Women's World Cup title. I know retaining a title and England don't go hand in hand because they've never retained the World Cup. We have. So soccer is home. Soccer is where it belongs. But I'm going to say football's coming home this summer. So I'm going to go England to win it.
Well, I can't possibly tip England to win it based on my predictions. I'm going to go on the other side of the draw. As you say, I think England have got a fantastic chance now to make the final without looking too far ahead. They are on the better side of the draw, and a lot of the big hitters are on that other side. But I'm going to tip someone on that side. I'm going to go with the team that knocked out Portugal. I'm going to go with Belgium to get over the line. I think they are the world number one in terms of the rankings. They've never won a big title before in the men's game, at least. So I'm going to go with Belgium to get over the line and win the title. I know they're playing Italy in the quarterfinals, so I might have to change my pick again after the quarterfinals, but I can't possibly go with England. So I'm going to go with Belgium and hope that my pick ends up being wrong again. Guys, if you want to get involved in the PDC Picks app, 18 plus, UK residents only, T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org for more on that.
Glad you're picking the team that knocked the U.S. out of the last Men's World Cup the U.S. played in. Maybe they'll knock England out of Euros, and you'll be right in the end. But I'm going to say I hope you're wrong, because I want to be right on this one. Now, let's go back to talking darts, though. Who do you make to be the favorite to win the first ever World Senior Championship next year? And this was, of course, our question of the week, where we had as our options Phil Taylor, Richie Burnett, Martin Adams, or other.
Looking at the poll at the moment, and it's going to be running for the rest of the week, so if you want to get involved, go and check it out on our Twitter. But at the moment, we've got Phil Taylor, not surprisingly, heading out the way, 73% of the vote so far. Richie Burnett, not far behind on 15%, Martin Adams 8%, and then 4% going with other. Give a mention to a few of our listeners who tweeted in some of their picks. Warren Allsworth said he'd make Robert Thornton the favourite if he doesn't get a tour card. Kevin Paynter also high on the list. Bambi 180 going with Dennis Priestley, although unfortunately I don't know if he knows that Dennis Priestley has pulled out of this World Championship because he's getting surgery, so he's going to miss this first one. But we do know the field, 22 of the 24 players. We do have the qualifier coming up, I believe, in November. So we didn't put Co Stompy and Mark Walsh on the poll just yet because we're going to wait for them to win through the qualifier first. But I think the listeners have got it pretty spot on at the minute. Phil Taylor, okay, we've not seen much of him recently, but you've got to say that the quality when we have seen him in bits and pieces online and in some other events, he's still more than capable of throwing big averages and winning games. So I think Phil Taylor is the safer bet. I will give a mention, though, to Richie Burnett, who at the weekend, the online league, the Champions Week, what a performance from him. He was the last player to qualify for it. And the finals night on the Saturday, he took on Chaz Barstow. Winner takes all to get through to the semi-finals. He throws 108 average against Chaz to win through that game. Gets past Martin Adams in the semi-finals, and then in the final think it was around 1:30, 1:45 a.m, so well past my bedtime at least, but 104 average and just missed out the 9th dart for a 9-darter to win the game as well, finishes up in 11 darts to win it. So he's someone who he can blow very hot and cold, we do know that, but if he brings anything like that form, then he's definitely going to be a contender, but I can't look past Phil Taylor at the minute.
Yeah, and just based on the way the question's worded, you have to say Phil Taylor, because it's not who do you tip to win it, who do you think is going to be in the best form. No, it's who should be the favorite. How can you say Phil Taylor should not be the favorite? He's the best player in this field. He's also one of the younger ones, or at least of the world champions in the field. We still don't know everyone who will be there. I like the tip of Robert Thornton. He's obviously been playing at a really high standard this year after losing his tour card at the end of last season. And so if he doesn't win back a tour card, he's definitely going to be live. But you can't make him the favorite. Phil Taylor is clearly the man to beat on paper and the man that the bookies will almost certainly make the favorite, and rightfully so. Still a long way to go, though. We'll talk more about the World Senior Championship as we get closer. Hopefully there'll be some events where we see these players go head-to-head and we start to get a sense of what level they're playing at in respect to one another. But at least for right now, Phil Taylor is and should be the man to beat. Or person to beat, I should say.
And lastly, before we go, we've got a listener question comes from Winnie to McDade, who says, who do you see is in need of a win in the upcoming Super Series to get into the match play?
Yeah, well, there's quite a few of them, and I talked about a few of them earlier. I'll start with Jermaine Wadomina. He currently is 4 wins clear of Stephen Bunting for one of the last 2 spots, but he probably needs another 4, maybe 5 wins across the 4 days. If he plays like he did at the last Super Series, he's not going to get them. If he plays like he did at the previous Super Series, he probably will get the results he needs. But it's going to be a very, very big first day, particularly for him, to start getting some confidence back and to ease some of the pressure on him. If he can go out that first day, even just win 1 match, that's going to lift a lot of pressure off his shoulders over the next few days because he'll be that much closer. If he can go out and win a couple, he's almost there already. Of the players further back, all of them will need results to get in because, well, they're not currently in. Unless players withdraw, Stephen Bunting isn't going to get in without catching at least one person ahead of him and holding off those behind him. And for Bunting, after just missing out on the World Grand Prix last year due to COVID, he qualified, and missing out on the World Matchplay for the first time in his PDC career last year, this is a huge chance for him to get back. He showed that he can still compete at the highest level when he made the semifinals of the World Championships and gave the eventual champion and the eventual world number 1 a very tough run for most of that match. But right now, he's not in the world match play. He needs to get some results to get there. And then some players further back who are playing well enough, Adrian Lewis and Steve Beaton, who I mentioned earlier, but even some of those players who are outside, let's say Adam Hunt, who just missed the last Super Series event after testing positive for COVID. He was right there, got himself in with a chance. Still has that chance based on what he is playing, but he's going to need some deep runs. Maybe his first final will help. And that would be a nice story for him, especially after missing that opportunity. Who knows? He could be in one of those spots right now, but for COVID, maybe he can get a big weekend and a big week, I should say, and get there anyway.
Yeah, that's a very good point you make as well, that the players are going to get 4 bites of the cherry. There's going to be 4 events to play in next week. And when we spoke to Alan Tavern on the show recently, and he's someone that's been there and done it all. He's played in so many tournaments in the PDC. He's used to playing the 2 events in a weekend, but over the last 12 months, we've seen it be 5 events in 5 days, 4 events in 4 days as it is now. And he said you can spiral. You can have a bad result on the first day and it can spiral into the second day and so on. And you can have a bad week. And it's not just a case of a bad weekend. 4 events, that's a lot of prize money there to play for. And yeah, I think you're looking at Jermaine Wadomina down really for players that are in need of a win. And you look at any of them players on that list, they'll snap your hand off for a title, especially on that first day, because if you can get a title on day 1 or day 2, it puts you right in the conversation going into those final couple of days when the pressure is going to be on. It's going to be at its highest. There's going to be players that will have been in the mix for months and months on end for this World Match Play, and suddenly they're looking over their shoulder and they're looking at other boards on how results are going. So I think you look at any of them players, and you mentioned them, some of the big names, if you like, Simon Whitlock, Steve Beat and Adrian Lewis have been in the World Matchplay for such a long time. Raymond van Barneveld, of course, he took a break and he's now come back, but he's well in the mix as well if he can have another title or get to a final. So there's a lot of players there. Some of the players, new tour card holders like Raymond van Barneveld, but you look at someone like Martin Schindler, who's played pretty well this year. Alan Suter as well, he's done well this year. If they can pull out a title on the first couple of days, they really do put themselves in the conversation. So that first 2 days is going to be massive for the players. If they can get a good run on the first day, it really does open it up for the rest of the week.
Anything else for this week?
As always, we should say big thank you to our guests for joining us. Thanks to Robbie and Rusty for joining us. Thanks to our listeners for listening. Thanks to our sponsor Low Six for their continued support. And keep an eye out next week. We're going to be dropping our next episode in the Darts Legend series. I had the pleasure of chatting to Peter Manley quite recently. A great chat with him. So keep an eye out for that one. We'll be back soon as well to recap the Challenge Tour, recap this Super Series and start to look ahead to the World Matchplay and one of the biggest events on the calendar. So looking forward to that. And we should mention as well our Dartscast trivia. The question last week was associated with our guests that we had on. Which player did Joe Cullen and Jose de Souza beat in the final to win their first PDC senior title? Congratulations to Chris B, who got it right. Daryl Gurney was Joe Cullen's opponent. Gerwin Price was Jose de Souza's opponent. And here is this week's Dartscast trivia.
All right, our trivia question of this week is, this year we've seen Rowby-John and Rusty Jake Rodriguez, our two guests on this week's show, playing in the Players' Championship events. Who were the last two brothers to play in the same Players' Championship events?
Thanks, Hannah, for this week's question. We'll be back. Well, we'll figure out if we'll be back next week, or not, because there's not really much of a gap between European Challenge Tour and the next Super Series weekend. So we'll see if we're back or if we're going to wait until after the Super Series. Probably wait till after the Super Series, and then we'll be just getting ready for the World Matchplay, as that's just a couple weeks out. And of course, the big return of live darts in a real darts venue, at least real darts TV venue, after Premier League did have some at Milton Keynes. But that's just around the corner. So let us know if there's anyone you want on. As we said, there's right now 8 debutants. Hopefully we can get some of them on, as well as some other players who will be competing. Let us know if you have any preferences, and we'll do our best as we always do. Until then, though, you'll just have to hang tight.